Hello, this is Life Coach Angelia. Um, Coming back with the Teen Pregnancy Life Coaching Program. Last time we talked about early adolescence, 11 to 13 years, and I spoke my opinion on that of, making your 11 to 13-year-old have a child, um, especially if it's not their choice, because that's going to affect them, for the rest of their life. And I know stuff happens, kids do stuff, they get a lot of misinformation about sex, um, you know. So we're going to come back to that with early adolescents, 11 to 13-year-old girls. Changes can be dramatic and sudden. Okay, if they haven't been showing, signs of puberty yet, and then they suddenly get pregnant, of course, the changes are going to become dramatic and sudden in their body. So you need to have a talk with them if you haven't already about, what they're going through, what's happening to their body, because, this is a traumatic thing enough without them knowing that, other things are happening. Um, Possible moodiness. We know all teenagers can have moodiness. And imagine a pregnant teenager. I'm sure a lot of us women have been teenagers and then we've been pregnant. Well, you put that together, double whammy. So be prepared for that. Confusion. Now, this can be general confusion or confusion about what's going on around them or what's going to happen next with them. But this is something that you need to address. They need to know what's happening. So, they're not left hanging with, what is going to happen next. I have no idea. Adolescents need not involve storminess. There are some who have storminess in their lives, and there's some who don't. It just, everybody's different. Some breathe through, some have a harder time. Changes in relative value of family versus peers and outside adults. Um, Teenagers value their friends' opinion more than they value yours. Sure, we've all seen that. It's kind of a bonding thing, trying to fit in society, bond with their friends. And you're old, you don't know what you're talking about. Think the world is not that way anymore, even though we know that's not true. But that's what they're going through. So you need to let them know you've been through, pregnancy. They're here, obviously, unless they were adopted. And you know a little bit about what's going on. So, you can relate to what they're going on because they're going to get advice from their peers, which is not always good advice. And you're going to still want to be parenting this child because at the age of 11 to 13, they're still children, to help them adjust to life, much less, life of a parent if they've chosen to have this child. Um, then we're going to talk about middle adolescents, 14 to 16-year-olds. Now, these are generally, have hit their sexual maturity, and they're in the first 3 years of high school. And this is generally a time of exploring themselves sexually. And, in high school, people start having sex. And, I felt like in the 10th grade, like all my friends had sex and I hadn't yet, so I felt some peer pressure there to, do this thing. So that's what your children are also going through. At this age, there's some pressure there. Um, so you want to talk with them about sexuality. When I was in school, we had health class where they talked about these things, but they don't always do that now. I've heard some kids say they didn't have that, and then, all my kids seem to have it, but there were evidently other schools who were not doing that. So you want to talk with them about sexuality, whether they think they're heterosexual, homosexual, something, in between, or combined, or none of the above. There's a lot more choices nowadays than there were when I was growing up. So you want to talk with them about that, where they see themselves, and, type of people. And you want to talk to them about, good partners, of people who treat them with respect, and dignity, and who don't abuse them, because that's going to go a long way in their relationships. Dealing with increased expectations. If they've chosen to have this child, there's going to be a lot more expectations from them. They're going to have to take care of this child. And if you expect them to finish school, which you should, go to college or trade school or whatever, which you should, then you're going to have to explain to them there's going to be some increased expectations on you because of this. Confronting increased risks. Pregnant teens are more at risk for depression and suicide. You need to talk to them about that. Teens that are sexually active are at more risk for STDs, and those can be, detrimental to a baby. They can cause blindness and other things. So you want to talk to them about the increased risks that their position brings them to. Continued balance of level and investment in their families. They're still a part of your family. And if they decide to have this child, they're going to give birth to another member of your family. So you need to talk about that. It's like, here's what your family feels about this. Here's what we expect from you. We're here to help you. Hopefully you're telling them that. We're going to support you and we got your back. Hopefully you're telling them that. Their peers, again, talk about, I was ostracized a little bit, because there were people who found out, that I was married, and of course it wasn't a legal one in the state we lived in. But, there were friends' mothers who didn't want their daughters to hang out with me anymore because I had knowledge, that they didn't have. Carnal knowledge. Ooh. But I feel like it was very naive of their parents to believe that, this person in high school is not hearing about, talking about, and maybe being exposed to sex of any kind. That's very naive to believe that. Sorry, parents, trust me. There are things being talked about in school that, are worse probably than some of the things you could see in a porno. I've heard some things that were really weird. But kids believe this stuff, so, you're going to want to talk to them, give them correct information, because their peers, are probably not doing that. And outside adults, certainly if there's a counselor that is good to them in school, I had a great counselor my senior year, Mr. Shelton. Before that, the lady was not so great, really wasn't doing her job. But sometimes kids have a good counselor. My kids had a couple good counselors, and then they had one that was pretty much a turd. But, if they have an outside adult who helps them, who keeps them on a positive outlook, grandmother, whoever, encourage that interaction so you can keep them up instead of getting down and depressed. And then we're talking about late adolescence, 16 to 21. Now I know that, generally people don't think of adolescence as someone at 20, 21 years old, but logical thinking, higher reasoning doesn't kick in until usually about the time you're 20, 21, 22. So that's why they're included in this. They're technically still going through adolescence, at that time, because their brain, is finishing its development. The body might be developed, but the brain is finishing its development where they have higher reasoning and logical thinking. So these teens, teach them consolidating and prior tasks. They need to learn what is priority, because they're still a little impulsive. What is the most important thing to get done right now? What should get done first before I, do this other stuff? And if, they ever watch PBS and were exposed to Barney or anybody, you can remind them that Barney said, do your work the right way before you take the time to play. That's something I preach to my kids. I don't want to clean right now. Can I go out now and then they can do it later? No. Even Barney said, do your work the right way before you take time to play. So, they need to be taught that, especially if they're pregnant and they're feeling lazy or tired or whatever. They need to know that there are tasks that need to be done first that are most important, and they need to learn how to prioritize, and consolidate. If I need to be in the dining room for this, I can do this, and then I can do this, at the same time, multitask a little bit, or, consolidate my efforts a little bit so they don't wear themselves out too much, because, you get tired when you're pregnant, carrying that extra weight around, that extra 20 on your belly, pulling your back forward. Trust me, you get tired, and your feet swell, so you get tired, your feet hurt. Emerging sense of identity, they're coming into their own. When they're heading into their 20s, they're starting to figure out who they are and what they want out of life. That's why, I coach people. Personally, I don't think you should get married till you're 30 years old. Because your 20s should be figuring out who you are and building a strong foundation under you. And I feel like that's what you need to have done before you start bringing other people into the world. By the time you're 30, you usually have your foundation underneath of you, and you can start building on that. So that's just my advice for them. But we're talking about pregnant teens, so they've already not taken that advice. But they're trying to figure out who they are and what they want out of life. And like I said, there are supportive parents who, tell their kid, I'll babysit, or we'll get a baby, whatever, put them in a good daycare. So this child can go to college or trade school or, whatever, help them, get a good job so that they can get a foundation under them, and essentially, yeah, they're growing up with their kid, and I've heard parents and, kids who, the parent was a teenager and said, we grew up together, and I think my mom was kind of, in that category with me, because I kind of always felt like she was more like my sister, my big sister, than my mom. My grandma was more like my mom to me, just because of the way she acted and the way my grandma acted. It was more of a matronly outlook and a teaching and talking to you thing, whereas, there was a lot of, with me and my mom, a lot of attitude, a lot of, infighting and jealousy, and I never thought that was good, and it's not. A sense of continuity, a sense of, here's what's going to happen. Life is normal except for this. Life's going to go on. You need to do this, that, and the other thing, where you're still expected, to get a job, go to college, whatever it may be. You're expected to become your own person and move out and get a life, needed for control over their own life. Children at this age need to have control over their own life, because if they don't have that, then they're going to be lost later on. They need to be in charge of their life, and you need to encourage them to do that. If you make decisions for them, they just learn they don't have to do it, or they're incapable of doing it because you did it for them. Neither one of those is a good thing. That I have seen adult children who are up in their 50s and even older, in their 60s. And they were never encouraged to live their own life, so they don't know how to do it. They're still looking for someone to take care of them and make decisions for them, because they just don't have the skills, and they've never done it, and they're scared to death. And it's just so sad, because by that time, their anxiety level is usually so high, no amount of coaching is going to help them. They need medication. And if they can get stable on medication, then you can help them. But at this age, they're still young. They're just starting out. And you can teach them, control over your own life. I'm not going to do that for you. But, here, I'll lead you in a direction. I'll show you, but you're going to do it yourself. You're going to pick up the phone. You're going to fill this out. You're going to do it yourself. Because they need to learn that. When you do things for them, you're not helping them. You're not, because you're not teaching them how to be an adult. And at this point in time, they need to learn how to adult. Separation and autonomy. They might make the decision, if they're over 18, to separate from you, move into an apartment if they got money coming in, or with girlfriends, or with the child's father, but that's part of life. You know, you don't want to hold them back from that because it's a learning experience. Even if the relationship doesn't work out or the living situation doesn't work out, then they've learned. They've learned, okay, well, this is not the type of person I want to be with, or these people, were not supportive friends, you know, like they're having a party out here and I'm trying to keep my baby asleep and they'll keep waking them up, they need to learn by separating from you. So if they want to move, you might know the situation's not going to work out, but you have to bite your tongue, let it happen, because that's how they learn, and you can tell people stuff till you're blue in the face, but their own experience is what teaches them. I mean, you can give them advice, and that's what, I've heard some of the older generation say, learn from my experience, learn what I tell you. They can't do that because they have to internalize it. When you're telling them something, it's not their experience yet, so it means nothing to them. It's going to go, whoop, they have to learn. Autonomy, they have to learn to be an independent person, and that's harder when there's a child involved, because they're going to want to fall back on you, to let you help take care of the baby and maybe them a little bit, but they need to learn how to be their own person, how to self-start. That's something with, people that I've dealt with through the charity and through life coaching. You have to be a self-starter. If you procrastinate, wait for everything to fall into your lap, you're not going to get anywhere, because that's not going to happen. If you're waiting for everybody to just give you something, that's not going to happen. You need to advocate for yourself. You need to be autonomous. You need to be a self-starter and a self-finisher, because that's how you get anywhere in life. So they need to be taught that. Transition. This is a transition period in their life. They're going from being an adolescent to an adult. Having a child makes that all the more hard. So you need to teach them, you're becoming an adult. This is what's expected of you. This is what society expects of you. This is what we expect of you. This is a transition period. And, like a birthday, this is a milestone. We just had my son's 20th. And we're like, okay, you're not a teenager anymore. You're in your 20s now. You got to start building your life, no pressure, but that's how that goes. So you need to want to tell your pregnant teen, this is a time of transition. If they're hitting 20, 21, there's drinking, but you tell them you don't do that while you're pregnant, because any amount of alcohol can affect the fetus. Okay. Developmental tasks for older adolescents and youth who are pregnant. Developing a stable body image and a sense of control over their body. Okay, now that is hard to do when you're pregnant. But you want to teach them, this is, how your body looks. This is who you are. It all came from your genetics, from your great and your great and great. This is you. This is how you are. You're not going to look like some Photoshop supermodel in a magazine. That's not real. They'll tell you, they did the makeup, they elongated the legs like so many inches on the picture because they felt like it looked better. I mean, that's not real. You need to develop with them a stable body image. You're a real woman, then you're going to have a real body. Just, be okay and take good care of yourself. Maybe teach them a little nutrition, how to eat well, how to exercise, reasonably. So, they're not having bulimia and anorexia after they have their baby. Teach them that, that it's okay to be built how you're built. It's what it is. And control over their own body. They have control over their body. They get to say who touches them, who doesn't touch them. Now, see, I was not taught that. I was taught adults are always right, and whatever they tell you to do, that's what you have to do. And if, you don't do it, then you're in big trouble. You're going to get your behind beat or worse. So that was a disservice, because I felt like there were adults, who did not have my best interest at heart, obviously, but I felt like I had to obey them. And thankfully, my children were not raised that way. I told them when they were little, if an adult touches you, in your private area, you come tell me, because that's not okay. And in school, they taught them, if an adult touches you, wear your bathing suit covers, tell someone, because that's not okay. So my children were taught this in school. And if yours were not, then that's something you need to talk to them about, that their body is their own, and that people aren't allowed to touch them, because some teenagers get pregnant from rape or molestation. There was a girl who got pregnant from her own uncle. He was babysitting. They were watching TV down in the basement. And he put on a dirty movie, and one thing led to another. And he asked her, "You want to do this thing?" And she's like, "No." And he held her down on the floor and raped her. A month later, she didn't have her period. And so she came to her mom. Thankfully, that mother took her down, let her have an abortion. Because, that would have been just scarring her for life. Managing their emotions. We all have emotions. Pregnant teens have more emotions, because not only are they filling with hormones, which giving them emotions, they're also having the hormones from a pregnancy giving them emotions. So just be prepared for that. Tell them, okay, I know you're going to have some emotions, but we're going to use our words. We're going to talk this out. We're going to act reasonably, and we're not going to throw fits, because that's what toddlers do, not teenagers and soon-to-be moms. Impulsivity. Teenagers are impulsive. And when you're pregnant, you're also got a lot of hormones, and you're not good. We have cravings. We want what we want. So you need to talk to them about impulsivity, that they're going to be impulsive, but they have to stop and think what's best for them, what's best for their baby. Personal behavior. Okay. Teens take a little risks, and they are impulsive, and they might want to do things, like fight somebody else who said something about them or whatever. You need to tell them that their personal behavior, there are standards that you expect from them, because if you don't, and if you say whatever, or, yeah, kick her butt, she deserves it, then you're putting your child, in a dangerous situation. And that is not smart. So they need to be accountable for the personal behavior, especially while they're pregnant, because they have a life growing inside of them. And if they're going to give birth to this life, they want a healthy child. They want the child to have the best outcome. So that's important. Strengthening personal accountability. Ultimately, the buck stops with them. And like in my life, buck stops with me. My son's life, buck stops with him. They need to be accountable personally for their life. They can blame everybody for everything if that's what they want to do. But eventually, at the end of the day, they are responsible. They are accountable for their life. So that's an important thing to teach. Sense of responsibility. Again, it's kind of the same thing, but they are responsible. They should have tasks they're responsible for. They're going to be responsible to raise another person. And they're responsible to give themselves and their child the best future that they can. So you need to teach them a sense of responsibility. Solidifying, satisfying peer relationships. Okay, there are going to be some friends you don't like. There are going to be some friends you do like. But that's not up to you. You need to ask them, who of your friends is the nicest to you? Who of your friends is the best to you? Bless me, Lord, perhaps sneeze. Nope, no fever. But they need to solidify satisfying peer relationships. The friends who are going to last. Not the friends who are going to just be their friend now because they're in high school and they think they're, a popular person to hang around with or whatever. Friends who are going to last. Friends who are going to be their friend for real out into the adult life. Handling sexuality and intimacy. And those are two different things. Sexuality is, how you are wired sexually. And we're each, wired uniquely. So you need to teach them safe sex, obviously. And, how that, you understand they're going to have these urges but maybe slow down a little bit. I was taught this base thing, and it's silly, but I took it to heart. Is like, sex is like a ball field. Like when you're 10, 11, and 12, you can only get to first base, which is kissing. And then like 13, 14, and 15, you could get to second base, which was, lifting your shirts. And then 16, 17, 18, you could get to third, which was, clothes feeling, or, that sort of thing. And then you couldn't have actual sex until you were 18. Now, all the people I know who is doing this, and I don't know who started this, I think it was somebody's pastor, but we all broke the rules a little bit. So, but you want to tell them that, obviously sexual encounters are going to happen, but, don't jump right in there. Make sure this is someone who you care about, who you love. Because, when you love someone, that's going to make that all the much better. So, don't automatically feel like you have to jump in there. And if a guy is pressuring you to jump in there, then he's not the guy for you. Because if he was a decent person, he would understand that you want to wait and make sure, that this is going to be a relationship, and you're not just a booty call. Have some respect for yourself. And then you need to talk to them, about intimacy. Intimacy is caring about another person. And it's like I said, I never dated someone who I wasn't friends with first. Because to me, that's important. That I can be friends with this person. This person I'm going to be in a relationship with is my friend. That's important. Because you're going to be intimate with each other. You're going to eat breakfast together. You're going to be in the bathroom together, and you should be able to have emotion and affection, and intimacy with one another, so build that relationship. Don't just jump in. Don't just be moving in with people. Build that relationship to the point where you feel like it is a logical next step, before you move to the next step. Developing personal values. Now, at this point, you would hope the child has been taught personal values. But if not, and is some of the case, this is a time to develop that. Personal values. What do you believe? What do you think is a smart decision? What do you think is a loving decision? What do you think a decent person would do? They need to have personal values so they can pass values on to their child. Because there's a whole section of society that does not have personal values. They're out there living willy-nilly, Lord of the Flies, and it shows. Making moral decisions. Again, you need a moral code, whether it be, 10 Commandments, the words of Jesus, Hammurabi's Code, whatever you got. They need a moral code. They need a moral compass that guides them to the right way and away from the wrong way. Because societal standards is probably not going to do that. Because in psychology, they teach you if someone feels like the risk of getting caught is low, they will go ahead and do a thing. Because the gain is more than the risk. So you need to give them a moral compass. They need to learn to make moral decisions, right from wrong, unless, their child is going to grow up and be a horrible person. And then pro-social decisions. What's best for everybody? Because people have feelings. And if you're excluding people or not worrying about this person, I don't give a crap about them, that's not good. And that teaches your children, to be selfish and only care about what you want and what's not best for everybody. Because when you become a parent, oftentimes you make decisions where this is what's best for the kids, so this is what I'm going to do, and that might lead you to some problems, to some heartache, because you're trying to do what's best for your kids first and put yourself second. So they need to make pro-social decisions. What is best for everybody? What is good, for all the people involved in this situation? You need to teach them that. And that was our bell. So that's all for now. And if you want to help support this coaching outreach, I will leave the link in the description, and you can by all means do that, and I appreciate that. Thank you. So that's all for now. Until next time.